Hello and welcome to Israeli Frenemies, the show that brings you all the debate and the hot discussion from Israel, from Tel Aviv. Together with me today is Akiva Bigman. Hi Akiva, how are you?
I'm good, how are you, Yariv?
I'm good. Let's start. Well, this week, the Israeli censorship decided to allow the Israeli press to publish the details about the attack that Israel made 11 years ago in Syria, bombing the nuclear facility that the Syrians built together with North Korea. Until today, it was only in unconfirmed information. People knew that Israel did it, but it was unconfirmed, and most of the details were hidden. And this week, because the media really push it, the censorship decided to allow the Israeli press to talk about it, to speak about it, to show movies about this bombing. And it was a very hot issue in the Israeli discourse. What is your take on that?
Well, the truth is I followed all these publications. Everything was classified according to Israeli law till yesterday. But we actually knew most of the story. I personally saw something on YouTube, I forgot who put it out. Very detailed information about almost everything about this attack was done by the BBC or something like that. And there was no, I was surprised to see yesterday, there was no new information I didn't know. The only thing that happened, the new information that came out was the dirt and the politics and the fights between Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barak and who said what and who was for the attack, who was against the attack. So we basically revealed the classification on the material, but what actually was exposed was the dirt and the politics behind this attack, which was a successful attack. And I want to say, I don't agree with Ehud Olmert on most of his policies, but this attack was something I think was pretty much in the consensus. I really appreciated him for that. But seeing him talk about this and say bad, nasty things about Ehud Barak, and he said this and he said that, it kind of left me with a bad taste on this attack, which I thought was a historical Israeli success. And I think it's a kind of a shame for us.
I think that politically this story actually reminds us, first of all, that in Israel there was a prime minister before Benjamin Netanyahu, and he was the head of the opposition there. And not only that we had a different prime minister, we had a prime minister that did the right thing and protect the Israeli interest and bomb nuclear facility. And I think that today when Netanyahu is trying to show himself as Mr. Defense, that without Netanyahu Israel is doomed. So we see that there are more people around, and we are not going to be totally alone if he is going to step down. Second, I think that the issue about bombing, it's for sure that we are talking about Iraq or the bombing of the nuclear in Iraq in 1981 or in Syria, it's a different story than Iran. To talk about bombing Iran is a totally different scenario, and I'm happy that at least we see that the Israeli prime minister then, when it was the right thing to do, bombed the nuclear in Syria, the nuclear facility, but in Iran, Netanyahu, that was speaking a lot about Iran nuclear plan, eventually Netanyahu didn't do it. And I think that when we see what was going on right and when it's a success, everyone are clapping. But we need to remember that the prime minister should also make the other decision when it's too dangerous, when it's counterproductive, not to bomb and not to go to a war with Iran, for example.
Right, so we see in Syria, Netanyahu has been bombing almost all the time, not nuclear facilities because they don't have, but all these convoys bringing munitions to Hezbollah.
According to foreign sources. It's not an official...
I don't want to reveal any classified information
here. Sometimes they are taking responsibility.
But there is, I think this is basically a Israeli policy which is consistent. Ehud Olmert was a big part of this. Netanyahu is basically continuing with the same line as far as Syria. Different operations that Israel has been doing, and I think this is good. So I agree with what you say, that Israeli security and some policies are basically consistent, and they're not exactly dependent on the personality who heads the state. As to Iran, I think Netanyahu understands that it's not a country that Israel can take militarily on itself, and that's why he's trying to create this international coalition, and the move should be more sanctions and diplomacy than maybe a military strike only by Israel. And we need to wait and see, but it's a bigger issue, and the facilities are also spread out, so it's harder to hit.
Yeah, and we are getting closer to the situation in which the American President Trump will have to make the decision about the Iran deal. And I have to tell you that personally, as an Israeli, I'm very afraid of this move, because if America will pull out from this deal with Iran, first of all, Iran will have the legitimacy to continue to create nuclear bomb, what Iran stopped because of the deal. And second, I think that we might find ourselves in an escalation that can bring a war to this region, and a war with Iran, together with Hezbollah in the north and other forces around the Middle East, is a whole new ball game that can be very, very problematic for Israel. And I think that we should do our best in order not to go there. And Trump, together with Netanyahu, if they are really going to break the deal, I think that international, diplomatically, it will be a big scandal, and I hope that Iran will not be the one to gain from it.
Well, war with the Iran proxies is probably a matter of time, and at some point there'll be nothing much we can do about it, but I do agree we should try to avoid it. As far as pulling out of the deal, the question is what comes instead of the deal. If there's a coalition, an international coalition to impose new sanctions, if there's other diplomatic moves, if we only pull out of the deal and let things go and take the U.S. military back home and things like that, so of course it's a bad move. But the big question is what will come instead of the deal. That was also the criticism on the deal, was that the alternative for a deal is not no deal, it's a better deal, it's different actions. No, it doesn't have to be a nuclear bomb. It really depends what you do, because between a deal and a nuclear bomb, like Obama used to say, it's either a deal or a war. Between a deal and a war, there's a whole wide spectrum of moves and things you can do internationally, diplomatically, economically, and that will be the big test of the Trump administration and Netanyahu, and we need to see where it goes to.
I think that if America will pull out from the Iran deal, so Iran will have the green light to continue its nuclear program, and there will be no way to stop it. And I think that also by doing it, you are actually spreading apart this international umbrella of inspection on the Iranian nuclear facilities, and we will find ourselves either with a war, because
History on the left this week, Yariv. Well, Meretz, which is the ideological left-wing party in Israel, is holding for the first time today open primaries to the head of Meretz. It used to be a party that was closed to some kind of
Central committee.
Elite with a central committee who decides who gets to head the party. And today, for the first time, they're having open primaries, which brings in a lot of fire and excitement on the left. And I think the main question is, besides gambling who will take, which is a different story, the main question is, what will be the future of the Israeli left? Do these primaries in Meretz maybe affect the whole leftist camp? And the question is, obviously, regarding the rest of the left, with Avi Gabay losing the polls and Yair Lapid getting stronger on the polls. So we have the whole map, which is changing on the Israeli left. And the Meretz issue could be a big factor in the game. What's your take on this?
So first of all, I'm happy that we are talking about this. The peace camp in Israel, the left wing, it's not just peace, it's also social issues and other issues that the progressive camp in Israel is talking about. I think that we need to remember that Meretz has a role in the Israeli discourse, and the role of Meretz is not to win the election and to be number one and to create a government. The role of Meretz is to represent the values, the ideological values of the people that consider themselves to be progressive in the Israeli society. Now, by doing that, actually saying exactly the truth, not trying to gain votes from the right, not talking in the middle, saying exactly the most clear opinion about Jerusalem, about splitting Jerusalem, about other issues that are very controversial, this is the role of Meretz. And when Meretz is weak and small and isolated in this elite, as you mentioned, then the voice of the peace camp in Israel is very small and it's not effective. But if Meretz will be strong enough to make the voice being heard, I can see all the political spectrum move a bit to the left. Let's see what happened in the right. In the right, we have the party, the Jewish Home. It's not so big. They have 8 seats in the Knesset today. But they are moving the right wing and the Likud party all the time to the right.
But don't you see
they can gain votes from the Likud. So this is what Meretz has to do. I think that there is a very good potential for that, no matter who is going to win today in these primaries. I think that there is a good potential. Also, Labour Party is going from the left and right. And you got another party, Yair Lapid party, that this is going to be the party that will challenge Netanyahu. And by doing that, there is a lot of space for Meretz to develop and to become bigger, stronger, and more effective.
But don't you see Meretz, we see one of the candidates, Tamar Zandberg, she talks about sitting in governments with Yair Lapid, maybe with other parties. So don't you see maybe the opposite is happening, that Meretz is kind of losing its ideology because they want to be bigger, they want to be more pragmatic. So maybe you see a little move towards the center and they lose some of the ideology. And I think this is part of the issues that the voters are coming out for today. Do they want to be more pragmatic or stay ideologically and isolated?
I think that a political party is not an NGO. It's not a public movement. It's a political party that needs to see how you are taking the agenda and creating reality out of this agenda, how you are being effective in the Israeli parliament and Knesset. And if there is an option that there will be a government that will not be a right-wing government with Netanyahu in the head, I don't know anyone voting for Meretz, Labour, even the Arab list, that will not think about joining this government and trying to be effective. I don't think it's so new. We have to remember Meretz in the opposition for many years now, because we have for many years not a left-wing, not even a center coalition. We have a right-wing coalition. But still, I think that eventually the difference between Meretz and Labour and Yair Lapid is because Meretz has a clear ideology and they are speaking out, advocating for this ideology, not trying to show that they are in the center and they are not so much to the left. They are left. They are called themselves left, and this is something very important for the Israeli discourse.
If Meretz runs to the elections after this whole move and widening the roles and everything, and they get basically the same seats, 5, 6, maybe 7 seats, will you think maybe that the ideology failed?
I think that we need to look at the whole spectrum, and I think that if we will be in a very big minority, if we will be a small minority altogether, Meretz, Labour, Yair Lapid and others, I don't think that the ideology failed, but I think that we need to do better in order to advocate for it.
Yeah, that's the guys left is the ideology is never wrong.
By the way, it's the same with the right wing.
Advocated right.
I think that most of the people supported the disengagement from Gaza, and still many people today think it was wrong and it was a mistake. It's fine to be a minority. It doesn't mean that you have the right opinion or the wrong opinion, because sometimes it's about values. And even if I will be alone, if I have my own value, I'm going to stand for my values. I'm not going to take the opinion of the majority just because it's the majority. But I want to ask you, do you see a change in the political map in Israel? Do you think that Meretz can change the spectrum?
What I think will happen is because Gabay and Lapid are moving to the center, so Meretz will be there to collect the disappointees. And these guys are more ideological, maybe they don't like Gabay, they don't like Lapid, they will go to Meretz, and then Meretz can collect the guys who are disappointed on the left. Us on the right, we always have these small parties who never pass the threshold, and we lose those votes. There are always maybe 2 or 3 seats we just throw in the trash.
We also have our own things, yeah.
So, but on the left there's less of that, and I think Meretz will have a role of at least collecting these guys. So maybe on the camp, as far as the camp goes, maybe the left will be able to, if instead of fighting with each other, I'm giving you a tip, don't use it. If instead of fighting with each other, Meretz, Gabay and Yair Lapid, instead of fighting with each other, you let Lapid bite on Netanyahu, and you let Gabay a little play center left with Lapid, and then you let Meretz collect the guys who are disappointed on the left. maybe you'll have a chance to sit in the government. I really hope you don't take the tip, because it's a good one.
I wrote it down. I wish that the people that support the position of Meretz will stop voting for parties that are more to the right because they want to win over Netanyahu, and they will vote for the party that represent their values. And then you will see that there are many more Israelis that support the idea of the two states, support the end of the occupation, support social rights, support women's rights, support even a legalization of... Unfortunately, in the last few days, we also had the Israeli-Palestinian conflict burning again, and several incidents with casualties, Israelis that got killed in a stabbing attack and driving attack. And we see, again, families mourning family funerals. And it's a reminder that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not going anywhere. And maybe we are in the beginning of an escalation. We are coming closer to the month of Ramadan. We are coming closer to the Israeli Independence Day that the Palestinians call the Nakba, the nightmare of the Palestinian people. And also, we are getting close to the moment in which Trump is going maybe even to come here and to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a thing that the Palestinians see as something very personal against them. So altogether, it's becoming more tension here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so every once in a while we have a differentiation in the level of violence from the Palestinians, and every time this happens, people start talking about a new wave, a new phenomena, something new has happened, and we try to figure out what's going on and why. I'm not sure this is the right way to view this. Palestinian violence against Israelis or Jews has been part of our lives for almost forever, and we should know that the statistics of attempts to attack stay basically stabilized all the time. So occasionally these attempts succeed, and then we think it's a new wave. But 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 2 months ago, there's been more and more attempts. The IDF and the Shin Bet, they catch people all the time with different attempts to hold terror attacks. So when you look at the attempts and the motivation, I don't think it really changes. It's true that they're sometimes they're more successful, and it seems to us as a wave. As to the embassy and things like that, I assume that this might lead to some kind of more incitement and then maybe more violence. But it's early for this. It's not happening yet, and I think we'll be disappointed. I mean, you guys will be disappointed because the embassy. I think the Palestinians care about the embassy less than what people think. They care a lot about Temple Mount. I agree. True. But about the embassy moving here or there, I don't think the masses really care about that. So maybe some people will have some kind of maybe professional terrorists will try to run some attacks, but I don't think you see the masses of the Palestinians going out and stabbing Jews.
I have to tell you personally, when I see the families lost a relative, it's break my heart, and I think it's break heart of all Israelis, no matter who is the casualty. And I really believe that we can stop it. I don't think that this is an automatic instinct of the Palestinian to do it all over again, because also the Palestinians are being killed, and they are not happy to be killed. I think that eventually what we are doing in the West Bank, in the houses of the people, the amounts of Palestinians that are losing their life with clashes with Israeli settlers or with soldiers, it creates an effect on the Palestinian. And I think that politically, when we are in a deadlock, there is an effect on the Palestinian. And I wish that we will solve the conflict, because I think this will be the only way to stop us from this wave of terror. I don't think that this is something that we need to accept and to say this is life, this is reality in Israel, and that's it. And when I see these casualties, I'm saying to myself, if we were maybe vote more to the left, but if we will support and we will offer the Palestinians a peace deal, a real peace deal, and we will reach it, I think that many of the casualties that we are seeing today will not see in the future.
Well, I think history just proves you wrong. I mean, we had Palestinian violence since the beginning of Zionism. We had incitement, and we had violence, and we had terror attacks before the occupation of 1967. And we had a peak of violence and terror attacks while we were doing the Oslo Accords and the peace process, while Ehud Barak offered almost an ultimate deal to the Palestinians. So you don't see a correlation between the occupation, peace, or anything like this, and violence. And also, you say stalemate. Netanyahu has been prime minister for almost forever, and there's been stalemate and all this for a long time. And still, you see waves going up and down. There's been a long periods of quiet and security. Other small periods of maybe of the stabbing attacks 2 years ago, and maybe a few more waves. So I don't know if we can really give this one big major explanation, except for maybe a historical hatred and a deep conflict that will be very difficult to solve.
You know that we have with the inside Israel many Israeli Arabs that call themselves Palestinians. They are Muslims. They care for the Palestinian narrative. They feel Palestinians, but they are not attacking Israelis the same way like the Palestinians in the West Bank. It's a totally different thing. And most of them, the huge majority of the Palestinian Israelis that have Israeli ID, live inside Israel. And they stop creating terrorist attack. You got really a minority.
Well, there are a few examples of that lately, actually.
Yeah, but very few. It's not representative, not even of a 0.5%. And why is that? Because they have rights, and the Palestinian in the West Bank doesn't have rights. It's true that we have this conflict, Israeli-Arab conflict, for many years, but in some places we succeed to solve it. We don't have Egyptian killing Israelis anymore. We don't have a Jordanian killing Israelis.
We have Hamas and Gaza killing Israelis, and we left Gaza.
But we didn't have peace with Gaza, and Gaza feel that they are disconnected from the West Bank, and they feel that they are under siege, and this is why the Gaza people will say to you, no, we are still under Israeli occupation. I really think that the only way to stop the terror and not just to go up and down will be to go for a final deal with the Palestinians. And
who are the Palestinians? Who are the Palestinians? Mahmoud Abbas is very old. I wish him a long life, but it's probably not going to be too long anymore. He's very sick. Hamas is pretty strong underneath the surface, and we don't know exactly who will come instead of Mahmoud Abbas.
Something optimistic for a change. I hope you will share it with me. There is a very famous music contest in Europe called Eurovision. And the Israeli song of Netta Barzilai became very popular, and many people are voting, and they are saying that she is going to win. The song is amazing, and I know that even in Africa and other places, they are playing it as well. So our viewers, go to YouTube, go to Netta Barzilai, you will find it. I think you will have a lot of fun. And maybe Israel will win the Eurovision Song Contest.
I think she's a very good singer and songwriter, and I hope she wins. She's very good, and maybe we'll have more good news, except for bombing nuclear
And she can be a really good ambassador for Israel and the culture in Israel and the music in Israel and the young generation in Israel that is dealing with politics, but many other issues as well. Akiva, thank you for being with me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, as usual.
Same here. Thank you.
See you again.
See you again. Bye-bye.